The city was alive with the usual hum of activity, the ceaseless rhythm of tires on asphalt, and the occasional laughter spilling from cafes and open-air restaurants. Skyscrapers towered overhead, their glass facades reflecting the afternoon. Sun-like polished mirrors, and the streets were dotted with people from all walks of life, each immersed in their own little worlds. Among them, in a sleek black limousine that glided effortlessly through traffic, sat Alexander Mercer, one of the city's most influential billionaires. He was a man who had built his empire from scratch, a self-made tycoon whose name was synonymous with wealth, power, and an unflinching drive to succeed. But today, for all his fortune and prestige, Alexander's focus was entirely elsewhere in his daughter, Lily. Lily Mercer was unlike any other child Alexander had ever known. Not just because she was his only daughter, but because she had been born mute. From the day she came into the world, she had never uttered a single word. Doctors had assured him that there was no intellectual deficit, only a physical inability to produce sound. Alexander, a man who had always relied on negotiation, persuasion, and conversation to navigate life, had initially felt a pang of helplessness when faced with Lily's silence. But over the years, he had learned to communicate with her through gestures, expressions, and a special set of signs he had developed. Their bond was deep and unbreakable, built on understanding that transcended spoken words. Today, Alexander had decided to take Lily to a small, quaint cafe in a quieter part of the city. It wasn't the kind of place frequented by the elite or the paparazzi. It was modest, with wooden tables, warm lighting, a calm atmosphere that seemed miles away from the constant buzz of his usual world. He wanted Lily to experience something simple, something ordinary, without the trappings of wealth and status. As they stepped out of the limousine, the faint clinking of a nearby fountain and the aroma of freshly baked bread and brewed coffee greeted them. Lily's eyes lit up at the sight of a small potted plant on the cafe's porch, and she reached out to touch it, a smile spreading across her delicate face. Alexander's heart softened as he watched her, the world around him momentarily fading away inside. The cafe was a cozy space filled with soft chatter and the gentle hum of a coffee machine. A few patrons sat scattered around, some reading newspapers, others typing away on laptops, while a soft jazz melody played in the background. Alexander guided Lily to a corner table by the window, giving them a quiet view of the street outside. The waiter who approached them was a young black woman, her hair tied neatly back and her eyes bright with curiosity and warmth. Shh, greeted them with a polite smile, her voice soft but confident. Alexander, accustomed to giving instructions and expecting them to be followed without question, had almost forgotten the delicate complexity of interacting with someone who couldn't speak. He opened his mouth, intending to place an order for both himself and Lily, but then paused, remembering the gestures they had practiced together at home. Lily, sensing his hesitation, reached up and tugged lightly at his sleeve, her eyes meeting his with an expectant gleam. "Wait," Alexander murmured, lowering his voice. He knelt beside her chair, his expression softening. "Do you want to try her way?" he asked, his hand forming the familiar signs they had perfected over years of practice. Lily's eyes sparkled, and she nodded eagerly, her hands moving. Gracefully to respond in her silent language, Alexander turned to the young waitress, his mind racing with the thought that this might be impossible. After all, how could a stranger possibly understand the nuanced, highly personal signs he and Lily had created? But then, to his astonishment, the waitress's lips moved, forming words that made his pulse skip. "I think she wants a hot chocolate." "And a blueberry muffin," she said, her voice calm and steady. Alexander froze, his mind struggling to process what had just happened. The waitress smiled, watching Lily's eyes light up with recognition and delight as she nodded along. "How do you?" Alexander stammered, unable to complete the sentence. The waitress chuckled softly. "I used to work with children who couldn't speak," she explained. "I learned a few different systems of communication. Yours isn't exactly the same, but I can understand enough to make sure she gets what she wants." Lily's face broke into a radiant smile, and for the first time that Alexander could remember, He felt a rush of emotion so intense it nearly choked him. His daughter, usually shy and reserved around strangers, had found a kindred spirit in someone completely unknown to her. He sat back, overwhelmed, and watched as Lily communicated effortlessly with the young woman. The rest of the cafe visit unfolded like a dream. The waitress, whose name was Naomi, took their orders with a gentle efficiency. Chatting quietly with Lily in the way she knew would reach her heart, she asked questions through gestures and expressions, guiding the conversation. Without forcing it, and Lily responded with a joy and freedom that Alexander had rarely seen. She laughed when Naomi made playful signs, clapped her hands when Naomi mimicked her expressions, and even attempted a few small tricks Naomi had taught her. Alexander, meanwhile, found himself in a strange state of awe. Here was someone who had no obligation to him, no connection to his world of wealth and influence. Yet she had managed to break down the barriers that even he, with all his resources, could not. He realized that in all his years of building empires and commanding legions of employees, he had rarely witnessed a connection so pure, so unfiltered. As they sat together, enjoying the food and warmth of the cafe, Alexander's mind wandered to thoughts of his own upbringing. He had grown up in a home where success was measured in numbers, where emotion was often secondary to achievement. He had spent years chasing power and influence, often neglecting the small, tender moments that made life meaningful. Yet, here he was, seated beside his daughter, watching her interact with a stranger in a way that transcended words. Feeling a sense of fulfillment that no boardroom victory could ever provide, Naomi seemed to sense his thoughts. She smiled at him knowingly and said, "You don't need words to understand what matters sometimes. It's all about presence, attention, and care." Alexander nodded, unable to respond with anything but a grateful smile. The cafe began to fill with more patrons, but the corner where Alexander and Lily sat felt like a world apart. Lily had grown bolder, gesturing and mimicking Naomi with increasing confidence. Alexander watched her, mesmerized by her expressions, her laughter, the way her eyes danced with excitement. He realized that for all his wealth, for all the technology and tutors he could provide, nothing could replicate this authentic human connection. When their food arrived, Naomi carefully placed the hot chocolate in front of Lily, ensuring it was not too hot, and the blueberry muffin beside it. She waited patiently as Lily pointed to the muffin, then to herself, then to Naomi, conveying her simple delight. Alexander sat quietly, feeling a profound sense of gratitude. After they had eaten, Naomi brought over a small notebook and a set of colored markers. "If you want," she said, "you can draw to me. I'll understand." Lily's eyes widened in surprise, and she immediately took the markers, sketching a small, whimsical picture of the cafe with Naomi standing behind the counter. Alexander looked over her shoulder, impressed by her creativity, and felt a swell of pride. The afternoon passed quickly. Alexander and Lily eventually rose to leave, and Naomi accompanied them to the door. "Thank you," Alexander said, finally finding his voice. "I don't know how to express everything you did for her today." Naomi smiled warmly. "You don't need to," she replied. "Just keep showing her love and attention, and she'll always know it." Lily reached out and hugged Naomi, a gesture that spoke louder than any words ever could. As they stepped back into the limousine, Alexander felt a shift within himself. He glanced at Lily, who was humming silently, a contented smile on her face. He realized that moments like these, moments of connection, understanding, and joy, were worth more than all the wealth in the world. While he allowed himself to feel the simplicity of happiness, untainted by ambition or expectation. Driving back through the city, Alexander reflected on the day's events. He thought about the barriers he had assumed existed, the assumptions he had made about communication and understanding, and the unexpected kindness of a stranger who had bridged that gap with nothing but patience and empathy. He realized that life's richest experiences were often hidden in the simplest gestures, the quiet moments of recognition and acknowledgement that required neither money nor status. That evening, back in the quiet of their penthouse, Alexander watched Lily fall asleep, her hands still clutching the small notebook Naomi had given her. He gently placed a blanket over her, his eyes lingering on her peaceful face. He knew that, In her silence, she had a voice more powerful than any spoken word, a voice that could be understood by those who truly listened. And he knew that, thanks to Naomi, Lily had discovered a connection that would remain with her forever. Connection that transcended language, barriers, and expectation. In that moment, Alexander Mercer, billionaire, tycoon, and man of immense influence, felt a humility and wonder he had never experienced in all his years. He realized that no fortune could buy the warmth of understanding, the joy of genuine connection, or the silent brilliance of a child's laughter. And as he sat there watching his daughter sleep peacefully, he understood something fundamental. True wealth was not measured in dollars, its assets, or power, but in the moments of love, understanding, and unexpected magic that life had to offer. For Lily, the day had been an adventure, an encounter that would linger in her memory like the soft scent of blooming flowers. For Alexander, it had been a lesson, a reminder that even in a world defined by ambition and wealth, the most extraordinary moments were often found in the quiet, unspoken spaces where hearts could connect without words. And for Naomi, the young waitress, it had been a chance to make a difference, to remind the world that sometimes the smallest acts of understanding could create the largest ripples of joy. The city outside continued its relentless pace, oblivious to the quiet magic that had unfolded in a small cafe that afternoon. But for Alexander and Lily Mercer, and for Naomi, the memory of that day would remain a testament to the power of empathy, the beauty of connection, and the extraordinary ways in which lives could intersect, even in the most unexpected of places. And, as the night fell, the city lights glittering like stars below their penthouse, Alexander whispered softly to himself, a silent vow that he would cherish these moments, nurture Lily's world, and never forget the lesson he had learned. That love, understanding, and presence were the true currencies of life, far richer than any fortune could ever be.